Some souls are destined to shine, even in death. This is one of the most hauntingly beautiful stories ever told from the heart of Appalachia. Nearly lost to the passage of time, it lives again. This is the true tale of the Lady of Light. Our story begins in the misty mountains of Ashbourne Valley, North Carolina, in the year 1861, when a radiant baby girl named Clara Whitmore was born into the world. Her lineage traced back to the resilient Scots-Irish pioneers who had crossed the Atlantic nearly 150 years earlier. Over time, her family had carved out a legacy of wealth and prominence across the Carolinas. The name Whitmore carried weight, signaling political power and social prestige. It was Clara's grandfather who donated nearly 700 acres to help establish the prestigious Whitmore College, and the family name could still be found engraved in stone across its historic campus. Clara arrived at a time of looming turmoil. The echoes of the coming Civil War reached even the secluded corners of Ashbourne Valley. Yet, within the walls of the Whitmore estate, life moved gently in rhythm with the seasons, seemingly untouched by the chaos unraveling beyond. She was the fifth of 9 children, raised in a home steeped in faith, tradition, and duty. Her father, a respected physician, made sure each child received an exceptional education. At a time when most young girls were expected to sew, cook, and prepare for farm life, Clara was enrolled in an elite girls' academy. There she learned to speak French and German, read the works of Wordsworth and Byron, and mastered the music of Beethoven on both piano and violin. She studied the art of conversation, public speaking, poise, and stage presence, all essential for a refined young woman expected to one day marry into wealth and distinction. But Clara was unlike anyone else. She had an ethereal beauty, long chestnut hair that caught the light like flame, porcelain skin, and soft, thoughtful eyes that seemed to see the soul of a person. Yet it was what radiated from within that truly set her apart. She exuded warmth like a hearth in winter, drawing people close, not just to admire her, but to feel the comfort of her presence. Her sisters adored her. Her brothers vied for her attention. And to her father, she was the crown jewel of his legacy. It wasn't just her intellect, though her tutors often marveled at how swiftly she devoured everything from scripture to philosophy. It was her kindness, her soul. Clara Whitmore grew into a young woman of dazzling grace, her beauty, mind, and generosity unmatched. The mountains of Ashbourne Valley were not just her home, they were the canvas for a life that felt destined to become something legendary. To the outside world, she seemed to have everything. But life, as we know, is no gentle stream. It is a path carved through peaks and valleys, full of unseen trials and quiet storms. For now, however, Clara remained a child of light, her radiance shining undimmed against the ancient, rolling backdrop of the Appalachian highlands. By the summer of 1883, Clara Whitmore was 22 years old and already beloved in her community as a gifted schoolteacher. She taught in both public and private schools throughout Ashbourne Valley and quickly became a favorite among her students. Her teaching style was anything but conventional. Clara was energetic, spontaneous, and brimming with imagination. Her words had the rare power to lift the ink from the pages and bring stories to life. On sunny days, she would often move her classes outdoors, gathering her students in a circle beneath the trees, the sunlight dancing through the leaves as she spun stories few had ever heard. She didn't just teach history, she breathed it. Her tales were not found in textbooks. They were passed down through generations, filled with parables of faith, courage, and hidden truths. She had a way of making each child feel as if they were walking beside the heroes and heroines of old, experiencing the triumphs and tragedies firsthand. Her students saw her not merely as a teacher, but as something far greater. A weaver of worlds, a guide into the past, a true storyteller. At the time, Ashbourne Valley was more than a sleepy mountain town. Like many parts of Appalachia in the 1880s, it had become a hidden jewel, a summer retreat for the wealthy elite from cities far and wide. Long before penicillin existed, people believed in the healing powers of fresh mountain air and crystal-clear mineral springs. Ashbourne was overflowing with both. Blanketed in endless forests, the mountains created a natural rainforest that purified the air, while the land itself bubbled with natural springs believed to cure everything from liver ailments to tuberculosis. As a result, fine hotels sprang up along the ridgelines, boasting their therapeutic waters in newspapers and travel guides. Visitors arrived from across the country, sick, wealthy, curious, or hopeful. Among them were many young bachelors, charmed by the legends of Ashbourne and soon by its most enchanting resident, Clara Whitmore. Her reputation as a schoolteacher and socialite spread quickly. Dozens tried to win her heart, many failed. That summer, however, a man named Julian Harrow arrived in Ashbourne. He was a senator and a former judge from Georgia, known for his eloquence in the courtroom and his tireless work in state politics. Like many before him, he had come seeking rest, healing, and perhaps a new chapter in his life. One evening, while attending dinner at the Rosemore Hotel, Julian heard the sound of a piano drifting from the ballroom. Drawn in by the music, he found Clara seated at the grand piano, playing a Beethoven sonata with the kind of emotion that stilled the room. Her hands moved like poetry over the keys, graceful, confident, full of fire and tenderness. Julian had never seen anyone like her. Captivated, he introduced himself after her performance. To his relief, Clara greeted him with warmth and curiosity, and what began as a simple exchange soon blossomed into daily companionship. For the rest of that summer, the two were rarely apart. They strolled the hills at sunset, sat side by side while Clara read to children in town, Julian often lending his deep, resonant voice to play the heroes in her stories. The children adored him. Clara admired his compassion. By the following spring, they were married. After their wedding, Clara Whitmore Harrow and Julian settled in Atlanta, where Julian's political career kept him deeply involved in legislative work. Clara, ever graceful in any setting, quickly found her place in the bustling city. Though far from her beloved mountains, she thrived. She volunteered in local schools, dedicating her time to teaching children from underserved communities. Reading and writing were her focus, but what truly set her apart was her ability to see potential where others saw limitations. No child was too poor, too unruly, or too far behind in Clara's eyes. She believed every soul had a light that could be kindled with care. She didn't just teach lessons, she inspired lives. The couple's home became a haven of hospitality, filled with music, laughter, and conversation. They hosted gatherings of educators, poets, and clergy. Clara continued to play music, read to children, and recite poetry with such passion that guests often said time seemed to slow down in her presence. And so the years passed, rich with joy, purpose, and love. By 1915, Clara and Julian had been happily married for nearly 30 years. They were still in the prime of their lives, their bond as strong as ever. But beneath the surface, something was quietly changing. At first, it was subtle. Clara complained of feeling unusually tired. She experienced fevers that came and went without cause. Friends said she looked pale. At Julian's urging, she saw a physician. The diagnosis was swift and devastating. Tuberculosis. Known then as consumption, it was a merciless disease, one that knew no boundaries between rich and poor. It claimed thousands of lives each year. There were treatments, but no cure. Julian was crushed, but he was also determined. He spared no expense, bringing in doctors from across the region, trying tonics, remedies, changes of climate, but nothing worked. Clara's energy faded, her once radiant beauty dimmed. She grew thinner, paler, quieter. And then the dreams began. Night after night, Clara would wake in a cold sweat, gasping for air, clutching her bedsheets. In her dreams, she was trapped, locked inside a coffin, buried in darkness, unable to move or scream. The lid pressed down against her face, and the air grew colder and thinner by the second. She could feel the soil pressing in from all sides. She was paralyzed with fear. No matter how hard she fought, she could not wake. The dream repeated itself night after night until even daylight hours brought no peace. Clara became afraid to sleep. She stayed awake for days at a time, hoping to escape the nightmare. She began to speak of death, not with fear but with urgency. It was then that she made one final request of her beloved Julian. Knowing that her time was drawing near, Clara Whitmore Harrow called her husband to her side. Her voice was faint, but her gaze was steady, anchored by something beyond this world. "I have one request, Julian," she whispered. "When I pass, do not bury me in the ground. I want to lie where the light can always reach me." Julian looked at her, bewildered. "I want you to build me a tomb," she continued. "One made of glass or something that lets the sun shine in. I cannot bear the thought of the dark, not after those dreams." Julian was heartbroken, but he did not hesitate. "I swear it," he told her, holding her hand. "The light will find you always." He summoned artisans and craftsmen from across the state to construct a tomb unlike anything the region had ever seen. It was to be built just outside the Oakcrest Cemetery near her childhood home in Ashbourne Valley. The design was simple in shape, but extraordinary in material. Rows of prism-like glass bricks formed its walls and roof, crafted to catch and scatter sunlight into dazzling colors. The interior of the tomb would be softly veiled, shielding Clara's body from public view but still allowing the light to reach her. There would be no heavy stone marker, no name chiseled into granite, only a radiant structure bathed in sunlight that whispered of her final wish. The tomb was completed in December 1915. 3 weeks later, Clara passed away. Her funeral was held on a cold, clear morning. The townsfolk of Ashbourne, many of whom had been her students, her friends, her neighbors, gathered to honor the woman who had touched so many lives. The carriages stretched in solemn procession down the dirt path to Oakcrest. Each mourner had a memory to share, of a lesson learned, a kindness given, a melody played at the piano, or a story told with fire and heart. Though grief hung heavy in the air, so did something else, a quiet reverence, a recognition that Clara Whitmore Harrow had not simply lived, she had illuminated the lives of those around her. And now, her resting place reflected that light back into the world. The structure shimmered in the sun. Inside, her body lay with grace, her face veiled, untouched by shadows. As Julian had promised, she would never know darkness again. It was a unique end to a beautiful life. Or was it? In the months that followed Clara Whitmore Harrow's burial, her glass tomb became something of a quiet legend among the people of Ashbourne Valley. For a time, it was known only to locals, a strange, beautiful curiosity resting at the edge of Oakcrest Cemetery, shimmering in the sunlight like a cathedral made of light. Some came to pay respects, others out of simple wonder. But over time, as life moved on, the tomb slipped quietly from conversation, becoming just another tale the old-timers stopped bothering to tell. That is, until 1927. 12 years had passed. The war had come and gone. The world had changed, but the mountains remained steady. One autumn afternoon, a young boy wandered through the cemetery, reading the dates on old tombstones. His curiosity led him toward the strange glass structure nestled under a canopy of oak trees. He had heard whispers about it from his grandfather, about the lady in the glass. The boy approached. The structure was worn now. A fine crack had formed in the mortar along the top edge. Years of weather had made the glass cloudy, almost opaque. Eager to see inside, the boy did something no one had dared for years. He pulled a tin cup from his satchel, filled it with water from a nearby pump, and poured it gently over one of the glass tiles. Then he wiped it clean with the sleeve of his shirt. What he saw next would become the stuff of legend. Behind the glass, faintly illuminated by the streaming sunlight, was the figure of a skeleton. But this was no decayed ruin. Her auburn hair still framed her skull, long and flowing, untouched by time. The veil remained, but the form beneath it was unmistakably human, almost hauntingly preserved. The boy screamed. According to the townsfolk, he ran so fast down the cemetery path that his shirt tails flew out behind him like the sails of a racing boat. By dawn the next morning, word had spread like wildfire through the valley. The Lady of Light had been seen. Children began selling cups of water at the cemetery gates to help visitors wash a window and catch a glimpse. Hundreds came, then thousands. Within weeks, newspapers from across the country began reporting on the mysterious glass grave in North Carolina. The Lady of Light, they called her. Not Clara, not Whitmore. Just the myth now wrapped in wonder and awe. What began as a local curiosity soon became a national sensation. By the late 1920s, thousands of people had made the journey to Ashbourne Valley to see the radiant tomb of the Lady of Light. Tourists arrived by train, automobile, even horse-drawn carriage, drawn not just by the promise of a spectacle, but by the mystery of it all. Vendors lined the road to Oakcrest Cemetery. Children handed out pamphlets with retellings of Clara's story. Enterprising teens charged admission to guide curious strangers to the grave. Some visitors wept quietly, others treated it like a sideshow. But the town grew weary. Ashbourne had never asked for fame. It was a quiet place, rooted in tradition, built on reverence for the past. The attention brought noise, disruption, and a creeping sense that something sacred was being lost. The town council acted. In the early 1930s, they sent workers to cover the glass tomb with thick black tar, hoping to block the view and discourage the crowds. But it didn't work. Within days, the tar had been scraped off by eager tourists who simply refused to let go of the wonder. Frustrated and determined, the council took one final step. Despite the clear and documented wishes of Clara Whitmore Harrow, they ordered the tomb to be encased in concrete. Thick, gray, impenetrable, they sealed away the light forever. Today, her resting place is nothing more than a cold, unmarked slab. No inscription, no sunlight, no sign of the woman who once inspired thousands. The irony is cruel. The woman who had asked, pleaded, not to be buried in darkness now lies entombed in it, forgotten by most, unknown to nearly all. And yet, whispers of the Lady of Light still linger. In quiet corners of the Appalachians, old voices sometimes speak of a glass grave, of a woman who taught with fire, loved with grace, and passed into legend. Some say on the sunniest days, if you walk past the older edge of Oakcrest Cemetery, you can still feel it, a faint warmth, a flicker, a story refusing to die. Now you know the rest of it. What about you, my friend? Would you want to rest beneath glass and sunlight? Or does the quiet of the earth feel more like peace? Let me know what you believe in the comments below. And as always, thank you for joining me in another true tale from Appalachia's past.